Welcome to the School of Sheen podcast. The School of Sheen podcast is a Perusia podcast series where we join Archbishop Fulton Sheen Expert Allan Smith to take a look at the writings and wisdom of Archbishop Fulton J Sheen with host Matthew-Hermann Tague. In this, our first episode, we introduce you to Allan Smith and the Venerable Archbishop Fulton J Sheen. The School of Sheen podcast is recorded online with a live audience in Perusia World. To be part of the live online audience during these recordings and to interact in the live member-only Q&A sessions that follow, please join us in Perusia World by visiting perusiamedia.com and clicking on Perusia World for all the information on how to join. Perusia podcast is produced in partnership with EWTN Asia Pacific and Voice of Charity Radio Australia. Allan Smith, welcome back to Perusia World. How are you today?
I'm doing well. My friend. It's a very busy life for me with interviews on radio stations, television programs, but great to be here with our Perusia family. And of course, it's just not Australia anymore. It's the world. So thanks for having me back on the podcast.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a moment. That you're actually quite used to being interviewed and even being on television, which I can't imagine. Tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you've done.
Yeah, well, I'm one of 12 children, and I tell people this all the time. The best thing that ever happened to me was being one of 12 children. And, I come from a generation of large Catholic families. So we had 12, but the neighbor had 14, and the neighbor down the street had 16 children. So we weren't the largest family, but we were a good sized family. And we had to sing for our supper. We were kind of a musical family. And so you always had to come and perform to get a little bit extra of this or some attention. And so I kind of know what it's like to entertain people. And again, the ham in me followed me my whole life. And so when I had an opportunity, there was a local radio station in my community who was looking for volunteers to kind of go to the air and do some spiritual programming. And so it was in 1998 that I started volunteering at a local station, and I did the Faith of Our Fathers show, which was just a show about Catholic tradition. And again, people really enjoyed learning the faith. And so I did that. And then in 2006, I became the host of the Holy Rosary program. And it is a 1-hour show on a secular station in Canada where we play the Holy Rosary, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. And, I'm there as the host, just kind of leading the prayer time. And so people know my voice more than they know my face. So I don't fear getting behind a microphone, and nor do I fear getting behind a television camera, because my mom used to make us sing on TV. She would go to the local cable station and say, my family will come and we'll do a half-hour show every week. And so getting on TV was the norm. But meanwhile, we just thought it was a way of life. So God was training me for the big show. And so he let me do the little gigs. And then the next thing I know, after many years of doing small shows, I'm then on EWTN television on a regular basis. And so God has a sense of humor. And what's really funny, and when people hear this, is a lot of people think of me as a scholar, as an elder statesman or something. But my day job, I'm a plumber. So my hands, I try to clean them up as best I can. But I've been fixing pipes for many years. And in fact, my nickname is the Pipe Padre. So people call me the Pipe Padre because plumber by day, radio host on the weekends, and Sheen Expert all the time. So anyway, just a little note there for our audience that's tuning in today. So a little bit about Allan Smith. But again, I thank my parents for volunteering me for a lot of things. And I say to every parent, don't be afraid to volunteer your kids. They'll fight and scream and resist you, but at the end they'll thank you. And I want to thank my mom and dad for putting me on the stage, even without asking sometimes. But it's paid big dividends. So thank you, Jesus. So anyway.
That is, absolutely fantastic. And I'm always amazed at how the Holy Spirit can pull together all sorts of disparate threads of our lives and weave them into this beautiful tapestry that can be used for God. I've worked everything from cocktail flair bartending to zookeeping. Don't have a qualification to my name, and yet the fact that I used to be an audiovisual technician on live corporate events brought me into Parousia's sphere. And it's incredible how all these different sort of career paths and jobs I've had is sort of all pulled together to be useful now to Parousia, which is absolutely amazing. I praise God for that. Now, you mentioned that you were on radio and television for spiritual stuff, but you also mentioned that you were brought on to television and radio because of being a Sheen expert. What exactly is a Sheen expert?
Yeah. Well, I think it's I'm still trying to figure out what that means, but there's it's an old Irish saying, and and a priest one time said to me, "If not you, then who? If not you, then who?" And we need people to do these jobs that you think no one ever think about, like, who wants to be a Sheen ambassador? Who wants to talk about a saint? And we see some people that have beautiful ministries sharing the messages of Padre Pio, the messages of Saint Mary MacKillop. There's many people that have a great devotion to certain saints, and they become ambassadors for those saints because of the messages that those saints were offering the world. And for me, I came across the writings of Archbishop Sheen. I always say by a God incidence. It was back in 2009, and my good wife and I were dropping one of our daughters off to university. And while I was getting my daughter settled into her dorm, my wife was in the library, and they were offering a number of free books that day, kind of tattered, old editions. They were trying to clear out to make room for some of the newer editions. And so when my good wife saw the free book box, she said, "Oh, yes." And naturally, she started going through, and she picked out a few titles. And one of those books was Bishop Sheen's book from 1949, and it's called Peace of Soul. And so she started to share that book with me as we were making the 5-hour drive back home. And that book really touched my life, because the first line in that book was this, I want to say, call to battle, but it was a line that, again, many people have heard for years now. But he said, "Unless souls are saved, nothing is saved." And so when I heard that, "Unless souls are saved, nothing is saved," I thought, Bishop Sheen is speaking my language. I like to say I'm a bit of a charismaniac, and now I have to be careful how I say that. But sometimes people who are friendly to the renewal, sometimes again people would say, "Oh, you're part of a charismatic group." And I just say, no, we're charismaniacs, because, sometimes we're taken the wrong way. But I grew up in the renewal. And so my mom and dad were involved in the renewal. And so as a young person, I was hanging out with my evangelical brothers, and we were handing out Bible tracts. And but yet I was, sharing with them the sacraments, the power of the Eucharist, and all the good Catholic stuff. And of course they were fighting me on it, but still we were out to go save souls. It was like the weekend mission was, let's go bring some souls to Christ. And so again, when I heard Bishop Sheen say this, I just thought, wow, that reminds me of my youth. Who's out there trying to save souls anymore? And so again, Fulton Sheen got my attention. And after reading that book, I started to consume a number of his books. And what I like about Bishop Sheen's books is they're not all that big. Like they're like, I mean, they're about 100 pages, most of them. And so they're easy reads. They're easy to, consume, I guess, when you want to say consume, but take to heart and finish them in 2 or 3 hours. So I like that. I mean, I sometimes get a little bit threatened by large books, but little books don't scare me off. And so before I knew it, I had read 24 of Bishop Sheen's 66 books. And again, his lesson plans that were in these books were really just food for my soul. They enlightened my mind, they strengthened my will. And so he was that good parish priest that just shouldered up to me and said, okay, we're going to fix you. We're going to fix you. And not that I need a lot of fixing, but we all need a little bit of fixing. And so again, Fulton Sheen, again, is a parish priest at heart, and his books provide these remedies. And so there's lots there. So I started to be comfortable sharing the contents of the book. And the next thing you know, I'm starting to give parish reflections. And again, I had an idea to republish a number of those books. And that's what led me to, again, the first book that I ever published with Sophia Institute Press. And that was The Cries of Jesus from the Cross. And I just had this holy inspiration to put a number of Sheen's writings on the 7 last words into one book. And the next thing you know, again, EWTN found that book and they loved its contents. And the next thing you know, I'm on Doug Keck's EWTN Bookmark Show. I'm on live with Father Mitch Pacwa. And again, I think people started to realize, hey, Fulton Sheen has something to say. And to add to that, of course, the cause for Sheen's canonization, the group in Peoria, gave me a ring and invited me to sit on their board of directors. So
Awesome.
again, God is good that way. But that's just a little bit of the humble beginnings of my apostolate. But God just, again, is waiting. And I believe in my heart of hearts that saints pick us. Sometimes people will talk about their relationship with some saints, and a lot of times they come in a very organic fashion. They just show up and they grow on you, and the next thing you know, there's a friendship there. So I think for me and Fulton J Sheen, he picked me, and he's been grooming me for a number of years now.
Oh, excellent. So who exactly is this man, Fulton J Sheen? Where was he born? Where did he grow up?
All right. Well, I think you can always Google, and this is what's beautiful about Wikipedia and Google, is you just, Google Fulton J Sheen, and everything comes out that he was born in 1895 in El Paso, Illinois. And he was born into a little, farming environment. And of course, his father and his mother said, we want what's best for our children. And so they moved into the city of Peoria and enrolled their children in the local parochial school. And that's where Fulton Sheen, of course, got a good Catholic education. And but yet his mother did something very special that I remind people of, that we have the opportunity to do the same thing. But when Fulton Sheen was being baptized, his good mother took him and placed him by the statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary in the church. And she then consecrated her little child to the care of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and, entrusted everything to her, and reminded the little Fulton Sheen of this consecration. And so when Fulton Sheen was about to receive his first Holy Communion, he made a reconsecration, another dedication, because he knew that the Blessed Virgin Mary loved him dearly. And his mother fostered that relationship. And so from a very young age, Fulton Sheen had a second mother. And of course, if you do any of Fulton Sheen's, look at his biographies, he's always talking about the Blessed Mother. He's always writing about the Blessed Mother. And in fact, he, when he was ordained a priest in 1919, he said that he would say Mass every Saturday and in honor of the Blessed Virgin Mary to protect his priesthood. But again, a little farm boy, moved to the city, got a good Catholic education, had a calling to the priesthood at a young age. And he pursued that dream. And of course, he went to seminary, and then, of course, showed that he was a brilliant academic. And his bishop then sent him to Louvain University for further studies. And there he received a super doctorate. He was the first American to receive the Cardinal Mercy Award. And of course, again, just a brilliant academic. And his bishop called him home to be an assistant pastor at a very small parish in Peoria. And he served in that little parish, which only had about, I think, seven people coming to church. And he was able to increase those numbers to 100. And he went door to door trying to meet the parishioners and, of course, convince them to come back to the faith. And he was very good at it. And so after his year of struggle, the bishop called him into the office and said, I've promised you to teach at the Catholic University of America. I want you to go there now and go and help souls in your teaching role. And he said, why did you make me do this hard assignment? And he says, I just wanted to see if you'd be obedient, And he truly was. And he always felt that, he would go wherever he was sent. And if his bishop sent him here, he'd go there. But and he was like that through his whole life. So he was very good son, a very obedient son. So went to Washington, D.C., the Catholic University of America, and taught there for over 20 years. And while he was there, he was invited to be the host of the Catholic Hour radio show. And he went in just as a fill-in, and they liked him so much that they said, I think you need to be the full-time host. And so he did that for many years. And he'd have about 4 to 5 million people listening in on his radio show every week. And so then at the time, Monsignor Sheen was gaining notoriety. And so those were the early years. And then I think the years that we tend to remember or focus on is his years on television. And so in 1950, of course, he was consecrated as a bishop, and then ended up on television. And there was 30 million people that tuned into his Life is Worth Living show, of which he won an Emmy Award for the outstanding personality on television. So those videos are still being watched today. And I know many people will visit my little website that I set up back in 2012. And it's just simply called Bishop Sheen Today. .com, because we need Bishop Sheen Today. And all I did was I took the 100 YouTube videos that are out there, and I gathered them up and put them onto one website. So people can come to the website, bishopsheentoday.com, and just go to the watch video section, and they can just click on the 100 videos and watch for hours and hours and hours for free. And, the computer is a funny thing. It gives you your statistics. And every year, over 1 million people visit my website and watch videos. And it's amazing. It's amazing. So again, it's a worldwide audience, and the internet is worldwide. So I sometimes just pinch myself saying, wow, 1 million people come to this little website every day just to watch Bishop Sheen videos. And of course, I've been on the radio for years with the Bishop Sheen show, and they listen to my replays of my shows. And again, the pricing's beautiful. It's all free. So people come to the website and watch videos for free and listen to audio for free. So again, all because of Sheen's brilliance on television. Those shows he did in the 50s and the 60s are like he's speaking to us today. And that's what saints do. When saints, they get it. And of course, they speak truth, and truth is eternal. It's eternal. So
it's a wonderful reminder, actually, that because the saints are preaching Christ, because they're speaking truth, beauty, and goodness, that their words are eternal, that they are relevant no matter what age we live in. The scripture is just as relevant today as it is in the first century. The rule of St. Benedict from the 500s is just as relevant today. Louis de Montfort's True Devotion to Mary and Friends of the Cross, just as relevant today. And here we've got this this little priest who did quite a lot of writing, as I understand. His words too are just as relevant for us today. So we probably shouldn't be surprised that 1 million people are visiting your website, should we?
Mm-hmm. No, and again, it's one of these things where the church, I like to say the demographics, like I live in Canada, and there's 35 million people in Canada. The number floats and changes all the time, it seems, with immigration and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the demographics of Canada is that 35% of all Canadians are Catholic, either by birth or by heritage. And in the United States of America, again, there is a high percentage of people that are Catholic. And so, and of course, in Europe, you have Catholic nations, I like to say. I think Italy is 91% Catholic by heritage. They may not practice their faith, but still. And so there's a lot of Catholics out there. And again, they're Catholics. A lot of them have drifted away from their faith. But Fulton Sheen was a good shepherd, and he wanted to bring those souls back. And in fact, I think when they studied the numbers, the church in the United States of America in the 50s doubled in size. And a lot of people point to Fulton Sheen as the reason for people coming back to the faith. The war had ended. I think Fulton Sheen started to just prick people's consciences in a bit, saying that you need God in your life, that your life is worth living, that God has a plan for each and every one of us. And, heaven is our home. And that Jesus came into this world to die on the cross so that we may be saved. And again, he preached that week in and week out. He talked about the incarnation on a regular basis, that God so loved the world that he took on human flesh and dwelt among us. And so he kept talking about these great love stories, these great love stories. And I think people just were saying, I want what you have, Fulton Sheen. I want that peace of soul. And, I travel across North America giving retreats and reflections. And every time in every place, somebody comes up to me with beautiful Sheen stories, because everybody has a personal Sheen story. I know I was recently just in Alabama at EWTN, and after the recordings, a gentleman came up to me and he says, I was baptized by Bishop Sheen.
Wow.
And I went, wow, tell me all about that. And he says, it's got a little bit of a twist to it. But he says, I was an orphan, and my mother abandoned me when I was a little baby, and they dropped the orphans off. And Bishop Sheen, when he was in New York, he would go and visit the hospital, and he would then find the orphans. And they would say, Fulton Sheen, this little boy was left abandoned by his mother. And he'd say, I'd like to baptize that baby. And so he baptized this little boy. And he baptized all the orphans. And it was amazing. So when I heard that story, I thought, wow. And I mean, this is what Fulton Sheen did. He would come into a town and he'd do his business if he was speaking somewhere, but he'd slip over to a hospital and visit the sick. He'd slip over to a jail and visit the prisoners. And there's many pictures that you'll see Fulton Sheen visiting people in jail. And so he was a consummate priest, always tending to souls, always reaching out. And I tell you, and again, every city without fail, someone comes up to me and tells me a story of how Fulton Sheen touched their life and had a personal encounter with him. And, these testimonies, if I just add them all up, I just say, he's a saint. He's a saint, just on with the witness that people have shared. So I tell you, I am just sometimes just gobsmacked, I guess is the word, when I hear some of these stories. But again, there's many conversions. Many people have come to the faith because of Fulton Sheen's, I want to say, convincing way. I think Regis Philbin, one of the great television stars, he'd always say, Fulton Sheen has these eyes that look into your soul. And I think a lot of people were kind of going, ooh, he's got my attention. So again, his I mean, you look at the beautiful picture you have of Fulton Sheen behind you, and just very regal, but yet very caring, yet firm when he needed to be firm, and of course kind when he needed to be kind. So again, he has all the makings of a saint.
Wow. So despite the fact that he became a very recognizable face in the US through the television show, you said 30 million viewers. Now, in ordinary human weakness, it would be very easy for a man to let that sort of fame go to his head. But what I'm hearing from you is that that didn't happen to Fulton Sheen, that his priesthood was always at the fore, his sacrificial nature. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, yes and no, in the sense that, we'd always say, and when people are tough on themselves, like, we see them and just say, that person is sacrificing, going above and beyond the call of duty. Again, you just look at them and say, wow, this person is just heroic. And Fulton Sheen was busy tending to souls. The list of converts that he made, and sometimes famous converts too, yet he does admit in his autobiography, sometimes falling prey to a little bit of the luxuries of life, those places, you always get the best seat in the house, the applause. And he said, again, in his autobiography, that after reflecting, he wished he had kind of ran away a little bit from it. But sometimes when you hear the applause, you're drawn to it, and sometimes you can get lost a little bit. So it happens to the best of us. It hasn't happened to me that much. I don't have these big crowds or anything like that.
I'm trying to avoid it myself.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So, but to answer your question, I think Fulton Sheen, said that he had to be careful of the sin of pride, because when you have people saying to you all day long, "You're amazing. You're amazing. You're amazing." Sometimes you can go to your head a little bit. But again, Fulton Sheen, I think, remained humble because of a very beautiful practice he had of the holy hour. And that was his, I want to just say, it's what people remember him for, because for 62 years, he never missed a day where he prayed his holy hour and found time to be present with the Blessed Sacrament, to listen to the Lord, and of course to talk to the Lord. And again, I know for me, one of the most popular books that I've produced that people order on a regular basis is a little book called the Holy Hour Prayer Book. And because people are always looking for what I call, I want to say holy habits. And this is what Fulton Sheen did, is that he was always showing us what some good holy habits were. And of course, the holy hour is one of those holy habits. So the fact that he talked to Jesus every day for an hour at least, and probably did 2 or 3 holy hours, that, I can honestly say that Jesus was his best friend. And when you listen to him on television, a lot of times he talks about the Lord in a very fond way, as if they're good friends. And so, and I think this is something we all can learn from Fulton Sheen, is that we need to make Jesus our friend, and, take him from being way up there and far, far away to very much in our hearts and with us each day. So the holy hour is something to learn from Fulton Sheen, of all his holy habits.
And was it the university posting that took him to New York? What was that university?
Well, the Catholic University of America is in Washington, D.C. And so when you know the geography of America, when you get to the East Coast, everything is close. A train to New York City is just pretty simple. And so he would get on the train and he'd go from Washington, D.C. Into New York City and do some of the shows. And, again, he would do large convert classes. And so there was that. But when he became a bishop, he was assigned to the Diocese of New York. And so he was an auxiliary there to Cardinal Spellman. And so he spent many years in New York. And of course, one of his assignments was he became the national director of the propagation of the faith, an organization that does charitable work throughout the world. And so Fulton Sheen, when he was on his television show, he would beg for the poor of the world. And he'd say things like, send me your dimes so that I can build hospitals and leprosariums and schools. And, he raised tens of millions of dollars for the poor. And in fact, he actually donated his salary, the fees that he received from the television station. He signed the check over to the poor, to the propagation of the faith, so that they would have food and shelter and so much more. So again, that job that he did for 16 years as the national director of the propagation of the faith was, again, people are still talking about that. And that's how he got to be known all over the world. He would travel to Africa and Oceania. Wow. And again, this is why you have pictures of Fulton Sheen in Australia, in the Philippines, in Kenya. Like, again, he was there. He went there and checked on his staff and his missionaries. And so, again, he walked the walk and he talked the talk. And but it's when he was walking the walk that he did go. And, there's the story of he went to go see some lepers in Africa, and he had 500 little mini crucifixes that he was going to give to these 500 lepers. And I think I have one of them here. It's a little cross like this. And so he loved to put little crucifixes in people's hands. And so he came up to the first leper, and the leper stuck out his hand, and it was just the stump, and Fulton Sheen was a little bit nervous. And so he just kind of dropped it on top of his hand, and it fell to the ground. And then Fulton Sheen realized in this moment of clarity that he had to become like them, as Jesus, took on the misery of so many people. And he picked up that cross and he put that into the palm of that leper's hand. And he did it the same for all other 500 lepers. And by the end of the day, he said there wasn't 500 lepers, but 501 lepers. And I tell you, Fulton Sheen, again, was not afraid, but he loved the cross, and he shared his little crosses, these little crucifixes, with so many people all over the world. So again, just another powerful story, one of many that are out there. And I know that those who are watching at home, they probably all have a Sheen story. And I'm glad to see that our chat and our room is filling up. So it's, I thank everyone for coming. We live in a, sometimes we all a little zoomed out, I say. We've had quite a long period with COVID restrictions, but still people are coming, still coming to these Zoom meetings to, share with one another, and to, hopefully be inspired with one or two Sheen gems, I like to call them that. So these stories, I think, really help us to increase our faith.
And what about Sheen's final days? Where did he finish his ministry on earth?
Okay. Yeah. And I think, there was some rough years for Fulton Sheen. His time in New York, even though there was a great deal of success with the propagation of the faith and television, there were those years where there was tension. And there was, again, his assignment where all of a sudden he got the call that he was being, given the position to become the Bishop of Rochester, New York, and would have to leave New York City to go to this. It was one of the smallest dioceses in New York State, and considered sometimes as a Siberia of New York State now. But he, again, out of obedience, says, I'm going to go where I'm sent. And so he went to Rochester and was the bishop there for 3 years. And they were 3 difficult years because it's hard to be an administrator. Being a bishop is very difficult. You have to make some very difficult decisions with parish closing and disciplining priests and monies and all this other stuff. And so again, it's different from being on television and running a diocese. And so some people were very critical of his years in Rochester. And so they were hard years. But again, not wasted years, because again, Fulton Sheen took every opportunity he could to serve his people as best he could. And so he filed his resignation, because he could. Once you get to a certain age, you can then tenure your resignation. So he wrote to the Holy Father and said, I want to retire. And so he did. And the Pope accepted his resignation. And then he spent the last 10 years of his life giving priestly retreats. He knew that the key to the renovation of the church and the salvation of souls was to pour as much energy that he could into the priesthood, because we need good priests. And we need priests that are dedicated to the holy hour, who are Marian, who are Eucharistic. And this is what he did. He just gave retreat after retreat after retreat to priests and seminarians. And he was very passionate about that. And so that's how he spent his last few years. He moved back to New York City and stayed there and used that as his base. But again, every chance he had, he would speak about the holy hour or try to build up the priesthood. And so again, I really picked up on that as I started to read his life story. And I have a heart for seminarians myself. And we've actually have a little bit of an apostolate in our Sheen Mission Society, where we raise money every year so that we can buy some books to give to seminarians. Because if the seminarians read Fulton Sheen and it all of a sudden it sticks in their head, hopefully they can become more like Fulton Sheen, and that we'll have a new batch of Monsignor Sheens and Bishop Sheens in the future. So I spend a lot of time with seminarians, just trying to help them along to understand Sheen's writings and to incorporate them into their lives. So again, I think Sheen gave me an example to follow, in that I kind of know that I'm going to spend time and energy and money on seminarians. And even if the seminarian doesn't become a priest, he becomes a better man because of Sheen's writings. So we're investing in those souls. So that's something that I've been doing for quite some time.
Awesome. That is fantastic work. And then, do we know anything about Sheen's final day on Earth?
Well, they found Fulton Sheen in his apartment, in his adoration chapel. And again, he had a beautiful little chapel in his apartment. And so, people who have visited his apartment always say the same thing. It was very modest, simple. And of course, he had his bedroom. He had, of course, his adoration chapel, or his private chapel, in the middle of his apartment. And then, of course, his study and his, of course, the area that he ate. And they found him in his chapel, kneeling in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and of course, under the shadow of the cross. And so they found him where he spent a lot of his time, and that was with our Lord. And so, I think this is very appropriate. I think this is, he wanted to die, and he said this, he says he wanted to die on a Marian feast day. He wanted to die on a Saturday, and of course, the Saturday closest to a Marian feast day. And of course, December the 8th is the feast of, she's going to come to me because now I've got a mental block, but it's a Marian feast. I think it's the Immaculate Conception. But he died on December the 9th. He missed it by a day. But again, December the 9th is the feast of St. Juan Diego, who is an apostle of course, spreading Marian devotion. And so in this, Fulton Sheen, of course, was an American Juan Diego, in that he was always trying to promote Our Lady. So it was one of these things. But again, he died in the chapel. And of course, again, 2,000 people came and ushered by his coffin. And of course, I think they were all saying those words. My Latin or Italian is not that great, but I think it's subito sancto, it's like, make him a saint, make him a saint. And so it seems like even though he died in 1979, within a few years, people were talking about starting up a cause for his canonization, and making that, connecting those dots. And in 2002, there was a formal, I want to say, the papers were signed. And I always
Right.
like to say, like, people always ask me, oh, so how do you make a saint? Like, what's the step-by-step process? And, I say, okay, well, the bishop has to go to Rome and say, our man,
Mhm.
Fulton Sheen, we want to make him a saint. And so they take the papers and then they say, okay, he now is officially called Servant of God, Fulton J Sheen. And
Mhm.
so the Diocese of Peoria started the cause of his canonization because
Mm.
New York City did not want to take his cause on,
Mhm.
nor did Rochester. And
Mhm.
we were happy, and I say we because I've represented the group from Peoria for a number of years, because Fulton Sheen is a Peoria son. And
Mm.
again, every year, Fulton Sheen would come back to Peoria in thanksgiving for his priesthood, because this is where his vocation began and this is where it was nurtured.
Mhm.
And so he appreciated his family that he had in Peoria and all of the people that supported him in his priestly mission. And so year after year after year through his whole life, he would always return to Peoria, even though sometimes he's painted with a New York brush. Oh, he's a New Yorker because he
Mm.
spent all those years in New York, but he's really still a farm boy and
Mhm.
from Peoria. And, I think family members that know him and will testify is that really he is a son of Peoria. So I think it was just very fitting that his body is now resting in Peoria. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful crypt, and there are hundreds of pilgrims that come and visit his tomb each day. And it's when you
Mm.
compare the two sites of Peoria, Illinois versus New York City,
Mhm.
it's hard to find parking in New York City, but it's easy to find parking in Peoria, Illinois. And there's buses after buses that come on
Wow.
pilgrimage to Peoria. And they've actually just built a retreat house there. And I know I'm going to give a retreat in June of 2022 at the in the retreat house called Sacre Coeur for a special event. So again, Peoria has their saint back, and now we're just waiting for a beatification mass in
Mhm.
the near future. And so again, there's lots of other things that can fill in the dots. And I know
Mm.
we don't always have hours and hours and hours, but I think this is what people appreciate is they know a little bit
Mm.
more today than they did, say, an hour ago. So I
Mhm.
appreciate you giving me that opportunity to share a little bit about Bishop Sheen.
Well, you say we don't have hours and hours and hours, when in actual fact we do, because this is only the first of what is going to be many podcasts. As you've said, there is much for each and every one of us to learn from Fulton Sheen, and hence this Parousia podcast series is called the School of Sheen podcast, and we are indeed going to learn. And I guess what we're kind of doing is creating a Sheen book club, aren't we, Allan? We're
Right.
actually going to work through each and every one of the, how many was it? 66 titles of Fulton Sheen?
Yeah. So no, yeah, Fulton Sheen wrote 66 books.
Mm-hmm.
There are over 20 years of his radio transcripts. There are, 15 years of his television shows, the
Mm-hmm.
transcripts, and he had a newspaper column for 30 years. And
Wow.
all of those transcripts. So behind me, I think over in this shoulder here, I think I got it there,
Mm-hmm.
is the full Fulton Sheen collection. I have all
Mm-hmm.
66 books. I
Wow.
have his 20 years of radio transcripts. I have all the stuff. So I've been busy reading for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have self-published and, of course, worked with other publishers. I have 24 Sheen titles under my belt. So,
Mm-hmm.
people will always say, well, how many of these books have you re-released? And
Mm.
I kind of know of the 66 books, there's about 20 of them that I call public domain books, that are
Yeah.
books that don't have any copyright, what I call ties to them.
Mm-hmm.
And when Fulton Sheen died, his will granted all of his licensed works to go to the propagation of the faith. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in some Sheen books, you'll say, this book published courtesy of the propagation of the faith. And so, so I put out a combination of some books that we credit the propagation of the faith, and we want them to be compensated because Fulton Sheen raised money for the poor, and it's their way of generating a revenue. And there's other titles that I've published that are of the public domain, but there are titles that people want. Those beautiful books such as Victory Over Vice, The Cross and the Beatitudes, Calvary and the Mass, The 7 Words of Jesus and Mary, just to name a few. And so, we've actually now partnered with Perusia Media, and I believe you're carrying 12 of the 24 titles. Like I've self-published now 22 books, and I have 3 books currently that are published with a large Catholic publisher in America, Sophia Institute Press. And so, some people sometimes will find me about the books that I've self-published through Bishop Sheen Today, or they may find me through, again, the large publisher of Sophia Institute Press, which, again, I'm indebted to because they have been so enthusiastic about sharing Fulton Sheen, and a good portion of the proceeds that we make from this book go towards the seminarians and to the work of Sophia Institute Press. So they are, both the seminarians and Sophia Institute are beneficiaries of our work. And so we're glad to do this. Remember, I'm a plumber. I do okay for a living, okay? So, I don't, I always just say the Lord is taking care of me and my needs through my plumbing business, but I'm trying to build a bit of a spiritual treasure here with the work that we're doing with the Sheen Foundation. So, so there we go. But
Awesome.
we're going to do a book every month. And, I know these books well, and I do give lectures at the seminary. So, I will unpackage each book as best I can. So we'll spend next month, we're going to, I think, tackle Victory Over Vice, because everybody has a sin problem, and I don't mean to say that, don't want to offend anybody that's in the chat room, but you may know, if you're saying, maybe someone that's got a sin problem, but we all need help with the 7 deadly sins of anger, envy, lust, greed, pride, gluttony, sloth. I think I got them. I don't know, might have missed one or whatever, but again, Fulton Sheen gives us remedies to these 7 deadly sins. And so we're going to do that, I think, in our next podcast. And then we'll tackle the following month. We're going to do the Holy Hour meditations. We're going to spend some time because Fulton Sheen has what I call a 3 7-step programs. Okay. A lot of people who have struggled with addictions talk about a 12-step program. They always say, well, I'm enrolled in a 12-step program. And I said, well, I'm enrolled in a 7-step program. And they kind of give me this look like, what do you mean 7-step program? But Fulton Sheen has what I call 3 7-step programs. And again, we will unpackage these 3 7-step programs over the next few months. I'm not going to give it all away today. I don't want to do that, but still, I think we're going to have something for everyone. And, we're going to make it fun for everybody. We're going to have book giveaways. I've got all kinds of clothing, right? So I have t-shirts made up that are behind me that say the School of Sheen, and it's got Fulton Sheen's coat of arms on it. And on the back of the t-shirts, it says, unless souls are saved, nothing is saved. So we got t-shirts, we got hoodies, we've got hats, we got all the suave stuff, so we're going to give away prizes, but of course give away a few free books too. We always have lots of books, but we want to make it interactive is the word. So plan to always talk for 30 to 45 minutes, of course, then take questions and answer the inquiries that people have. And we're going to do that. I mean, there is, as I say, 66 books, and I think we can go for 5 years if you want. But
Very probably.
I think what we're going to do is do the 12 that Perusia Media have listed, and we'll start with that. And as we approach Lent, we will then to what I call the Lenten series that Fulton Sheen, of course, the Cries of Jesus from the Cross. and we'll kind of concentrate on that. So there's stuff for Advent, there's stuff for Lent, and of course, with this library that is available to us, we will be, let's just say, good students by the end. So we're
And
all
of course,
yeah.
We're also we are going to announce what title we're going to do, for next month and the month after. So what we're actually doing is we're inviting people to go and purchase the book, read the book for yourself, and then come into these podcasts, have Allan unpack some of the main points. But then what we really want is, if you've read the book, come and ask your questions. Come and try and get some deeper understanding from a man who's spent a lot of time in the writings of Fulton Sheen. And so next month, Victory Over Vice, and the month after that, The Holy Hour. And if you're in Australia, you can, of course, get those titles from Parousia at parousiamedia.com. And in the US, you can also get them from Allan's website, which is bishopsheentoday.com. All right.
Yeah. And I mean, if you live in Japan, you can get it through Amazon.Japan. And if you
I wanted to ask about that, actually, because Parousia World has a very strong contingent from the Philippines. Where's the best place for people in the Philippines and Malaysia to get a hold of these books, Allan?
Well, I still think that, I think the world has gone, I'm not saying Amazon crazy, but, it just seems that Amazon has a real presence, and not everybody's a fan of Amazon, and I understand that, and that's why it's nice to have Catholic retailers and other avenues to purchase books. But I still think sometimes for some, Amazon is the default, and so Amazon has what I call 12 large centers that they focus on. There's Japan, the United Kingdom, there's Germany, there's France, Spain, Italy. Australia, of course, is one of their locales.
But buy from Parousia. Don't if you're in Australia, buy from Parousia.
No, buy from Parousia. That's right. Yeah. And so, but they don't have Amazon Philippines. I haven't seen it yet, or maybe they do. I mean, I think they do. But what happens with our printing arm is that there's 12 areas, 12 places that we print our books. With licensing, of course, in Australia, Parousia is printing our books. So we ask you to support Parousia if you're from the land down under. If you, of course, live in North America, Japan, the United Kingdom, or Europe, by all means, you can find us on Amazon or through my website, bishopsheentoday.com, and I'll be able to direct you and get the books to you. And we actually even have sometimes what we call our we call it a free book offer. Now, sometimes people say something to me like, we typically, people give us a donation, we send them a book. I mean, we want to thank people for that. So people will come in and say, for example, give us a $50 donation. We'll then give them 2 books. And so we've done that for years now. And, so there's a little thing that you'll see when you come on the website. And so it's just kind of like this, the bigger the donation, the more books we give you, right? But we keep a little bit to help us with our seminarian program and to pay our bills, but we want people to read Sheen. So so people will visit bishopsheentoday.com and you'll see the free book offer and you can read through it, but just give us a donation, tell us what books you want, and we'll help you out. And of course, it's easy for us to get it no matter where you live. And if it's Australia, if it's in Canada, if it's in America, in Ireland, or even Japan, we can help you with that. So hopefully that. So, all right. And I think Paula...
Of course, I would like to reiterate that, please do go to bishopsheentoday.com and please consider donating to Allan's work with seminarians. As we've heard that Bishop Fulton Sheen had a great love of the priesthood, of priests and of seminarians. And so getting these books into the hands of our future priests is a very noble mission. So please consider donating to Allan. All right, well, we do have some live participants. We're a little out of time. So what we're going to do now is finish up the recording and then go into our private Q&A. But we hope that you've enjoyed today's talk, and we encourage you to go and get a hold of the book for next month, Victory Over Vice, and then come back and join Allan and myself next month. Allan, thank you so much for giving so much of your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And, I think, I just sometimes still pinch myself and say, Lord, why do you have me doing this work? I mean, I still, I'm a father, a grandfather, a husband, a business owner, a plumber. And yet he still keeps calling me to say, oh, but I want you to talk about Sheen to a group from Australia and all over the world. So, and so I'm glad to do that. I mean, I learned from St. Therese, the little flower, years ago. And I'm paraphrasing here, but she was sitting one day on her grandfather's lap, and she was looking up in the stars, and she saw in the stars a letter T. And she said to her father or her grandfather, Papa, my name is written in heaven. I know I'm going to spend my eternity with Jesus. And it was that idea of eternity that St. Therese knew that she was made forever. That there was something inside of her that was going to be forever. Yes, her body would deteriorate, and it only had so many years in it, but she knew that her soul was forever. And so taking that to heart, I realized I was made for eternity. Get used to it, embrace it, and know that God has a plan. So today I'm busy plumbing and Sheen. When the Lord closes my eyes, he'll have work for me to do in heaven. So again, I just trust in the Lord. And I want everyone at home to have that same trust that St. Therese had, that again, to know and embrace that you were made for eternity. Get used to it. And as Fulton Sheen said, your life is worth living. God has a plan for you. And sometimes that plan includes a little bit of pain and suffering, but he still has a plan for you. And so all will be well. So again, I'll leave that with my parting words, I guess. And I want to thank everybody that's joined us. And looking forward to talking about Victory Over Vice next month, and then the Holy Hour the following month. And, I think it's one of these things, once you read one of his books, the next thing you know, you're reading another one and another one. You're going to be just like me. You're going to have read 24 books within the first year, and you're kind of going to go, wow, that was easy. That was easy. Yeah. So it's all
awesome. Okay. All right. So thank you everyone to have listened to this podcast, the School of Sheen, the very first School of Sheen podcast. And we look forward to your company again next month. Thank you very much, and God bless. Thanks for listening to the Parousia podcast. If you've enjoyed these podcasts, please share with your family and friends. And for more information about everything Parousia, please visit our website at parousiamedia.com.